Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today's guest is Suzie Lockhart, the editor of the Dastardly Damsels anthology. And I'm going to let her introduce herself now, so take it away.
Hi, I'm Suzie Lockhart. A lot of the horror writers out there in the community, I think you know who I am. I've edited several anthologies, and also have some short stories out there floating around. So, I'm a mother of four. Three of them are adults, and I have a teenage daughter. She's my only girl. She's going to homecoming, so I just had to squeeze that in there, of course. Um, yeah, so if there's anything else you want to know, just feel free to ask.
Okay, so what inspired the creation of the anthology, Dastardly Damsels?
Well, I had done Killing It Softly 1 and 2, and those were quite successful. And I missed working with women. They bring a different flavor to stories, and I just really missed it. So I had this crazy idea to just do one and had no publisher, nothing, just put out the call and said, I'll find a publisher, I promise. And I was just amazed. I mean, I had like probably 250 responses to the call, which made me feel really good because I made it clear that we did not have a publisher yet. And so for all those women to put their trust in me, I thank each and every one of them, not just the ones in the anthology, but the ones that submitted, everyone. I really appreciate it. Um, and so I begged Joe a second time, and then he said yes. And then that helped me not look like a complete dork. Yeah. Um, and the name, I was trying to think of something that was kind of an oxymoron, and I was thinking of like the damsel in distress. And for some reason, Dastardly Doolittle popped up in my head. Probably a lot of people don't even remember who he is, but he was in cartoons when I was little, which was like 50 years ago. And I thought, let's let the women be dastardly now. So that's how I came up with the name Dastardly Damsels.
Okay, so the anthology explores horror from the female perspective as both female protagonists and authors. So what do you think of the state of women in horror today?
I think women have proven that they can write horror just as well as men. In fact, I think there are maybe more female horror writers now than there are males. Um, I know when I put the call out for the anthology, I had a couple of men who were upset and were complaining that it should be open to everybody. And I understood their point, but I mean, it was about women, it was for women, it was, it was for everybody. But um I think women bring different experiences to the table, and it makes their horror stories different. They're just like I said earlier, they're a different flavor than male horror writers, and so that's where I think we're at right now. I think, well, I don't want to get too like political or anything, but I think women are a little shook up by some of the things that have been happening, and they want to tell their story.
Yeah. It's definitely becoming easier to tell the stories too, I think, in this day and age than it used to be.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So that actually leads into the next question quite well, which is, do you think horror lends itself specifically to exploring certain aspects of the female experience?
definitely. I mean, generally speaking, women, you know, are more often raped than men. Women bleed monthly, sometimes they're abused or minimized. Women carry babies, and sometimes they miscarry babies. And that is a horrible experience. I had a miscarriage between my youngest boy and my girl. And it is an experience that still haunts me to this day because I found out on Friday. I went for my 16-week checkup and found out on Friday that there was no heartbeat and that the baby had passed in my womb. And I didn't have a traditional miscarriage. So I had to go back into the hospital on Monday to have, a, a procedure to remove the fetus because the fetus was dead. So I had to go the whole weekend knowing I was carrying my dead child inside me. Um, I think that's the type of experience that, a male just isn't going to have. And so, yeah, I definitely think women have a lot of different experiences than men, not to say better or worse, but just different. And that's okay. I think that's okay to do anthologies that are based on a particular gender or, you know, affiliation or whatnot. Because everybody has different experiences.
Yeah, definitely. And sorry for your experience. That doesn't sound like a pleasant one.
Thank you.
And so if you were going to pick a main theme for this anthology, what would it be?
I'm going to tell you, the stories in this anthology are so diverse that I could not pick a theme except for the Dastardly Damsels. All I could say about the stories is they're eclectic. They all fit together, but they're all different. So that's the only word I can come up with.
Yeah. Having read some of them, I agree with you, although I think perseverance would be a good word for the anthology as well.
Okay, perseverance. I like that. That sounds good.
So, can you give us a quick rundown of some of the stories? What can readers look forward to?
Yeah, they can look forward to expecting the unexpected. Um, the stories range from, a spell casting to an unhinged artist, from a woman who is a professional mourner to a jealous elevator. Um, we have mythology. We have a bleak story about global warming from Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, who I was delighted to get into this anthology. I already had permission to reprint a story I had done. I had done another anthology of Rachel Gaines, who had passed away a couple of years ago, and they let me put Death Warmed Over, which is about a witch who can bring people back from the dead. Um, and then Nancy Holder. I'm going to tell you, anybody that knows Nancy knows she's a fantastic person. She just always supports me. Even when things got rough through this anthology, she supported me, and I will just never forget that. I appreciate that so very much. Um, but anyway, back to the stories. So there's, the horrible, bleak global warming future. There's aliens. There's vengeful ghosts. There's poetry at its finest, really.
Mm.
The poems are amazing. Um, there, there's a witch and a doctor who can raise the dead, which is really different than Frankenstein. Um, and I'll tell you, there is a story that has the most shocking ending I have ever read. I will tell you the name of that story in the next segment when you ask me about the stories that stand out, and which ones I really liked. And we have a final girl who has the final story before the tribute to Rachel Kane. It's called The Final Girl, and it's nothing like the final girl in the movies. Um, she deeply experiences what I think somebody would experience if they had been kidnapped away from their regular life for 3 years. Um, and I don't want to tell you too much about it. I don't want to give it away. It's by Mia Dahlia, who is a rising star in the horror community, and it's a fantastic story. The first time I read it, I just fell in love with it. So, um, I there's a lot to look forward to, I think, in this anthology.
Okay, so and the next question is, which story or stories stood out for you personally?
You know, that puts me on the spot because I got to pick.
Yeah,
But
well, I'm not asking as an editor, I'm asking as you as a reader. Which ones as a reader did you enjoy?
okay, okay, yeah. I mean, all the stories were fantastic and special to me, but aside from each story being excellent, there were, some authors I really enjoyed working with and some stories I really enjoyed. That would be Moth Girl, Matilda's Morning. Have you read those ones yet?
Yeah, I did. They were both good, great
Yeah,
stories. Yeah, I enjoyed them.
yeah. Lucille Sings the Blues.
Yeah, that one was fun. That one was fun. I like that one.
H.R. Boldwood. She's another rising star in the horror community. Um, there's a story called the Roxy Special, which, see, I'm a big Sylvester Stallone movie fan. I loved, Rocky and Rambo. And that's basically a Rambo stripper story. So you'll find nothing like that anywhere else except in this anthology. Um, I like The Woman in the Woods. It's a more, it's not as horrific of a horror story, let's just say. Endra, and that's the one by Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough, and The Final Girl by Mia Dahlia. Unclean Break was my favorite poem out of the poems, although they were all amazing. I love Death Warmed Over. I'm so glad I got to print that again. And I know you wanted to know if there was a shocker in
Yeah,
this
did any of the
anthology.
stories surprise you?
Yes, there was a story by Alicia Raff called In Dire Straits. And at this point, I wasn't going to take any more stories in the anthology. No more, especially like a reprint. I was done. I read this story and I said, I have to take it. Um, Initially, I started this once I had the idea. Um, an author friend, a horror author friend that I'd had for many, many years was working with me on it. But we had, let's just say, creative differences, and she backed out and she didn't want her name mentioned, didn't want her name on anything. But I will tell you, she also read the story, and we both agreed that it was dynamic and it needed to be in the anthology. So, and it's 9,000 words. I stuck it right in the middle to wake people up.
So, what was your favorite thing about editing the anthology?
Well, I'm more of a developmental type of editor. And what I like doing is trying to help, an author grow, and I see their work, becoming what I saw, like what my vision of the best version of their story could be. and most times authors agree. And it's really rewarding when it all comes together. And, I've brought them to a place where they now have just this magnificent story. I I just have a talent for being able to read a story and know what it needs. As far as like traditional editor goes, I was always good at English, but I'm not perfect, which is why I had, after my co um editor left, I had Marianne Halbert, bless her heart, she offered to be my assistant editor and go through the anthology, and that was very helpful. And then Pixie Bruner, who works for you guys, she proofread it, and she did a dynamic job proofreading it. She thought of some things for a couple of stories that were contradictory, and I just tweaked things a little bit. So authors, don't get nervous, because I made sure I did as little as I possibly could to the story. Um, but it was it was challenging, but very rewarding. And to see it all come together in the end, I'm just blown away by all the attention it's getting and everything. I'm just like, wow. So
Yeah, well, you did a very good job because I haven't quite finished all the stories yet, but the ones I have read, can't say I have disliked any of them. I've enjoyed them all. So,
thank you.
um, what was the hardest thing about editing the anthology? Did you run into any unexpected issues?
Well, yeah, obviously when my co-editor
Yeah.
and I had creative differences, I have my own personal thoughts on why that happened, but I'm not going to say them on the air. But it was very difficult because I not only lost a co-editor, I lost a friend. I'd had her as a friend for many years in the horror community, and even had praised some of her stories in other anthologies. But it just we were just like, I don't know, magnets that oppose each other when we tried to work together. And that was really hard. I it took me it took me a while to get back into the groove of the anthology after that, because it was just so, I had 130,000 words to edit on my own at that point, and I was kind of freaked out. But it all worked out in the end. So
Okay, so what do you like best about editing in general? What does it bring to your creative process?
it's just rewarding. It's very rewarding. It allows my creativity to like meld with another author, and it's a lot of fun when we see something, we have a vision together, and we bring that to fruition. It's so rewarding. I love it so much. I I edit everything. My son writes. He has a novella out, and he put it out without letting me finish the editing on it. And he's very creative, but he's not quite as technical minded, let's just say, as I am. And somebody made a comment about it, and I was like, what am I going to do? But he was my writing partner for a long, long time. He still is, but he moved to Texas last year. And so it's kind of hard to get on board with writing together. with him so far away. Obviously, we can FaceTime and all that, so that helps. But we're trying to work on a novel together, and it is challenging. And we've brought my younger son in too because he's also very creative. He's the dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons. And he comes up with these storylines for that. And so having that third eye is helpful, sometimes frustrating, but mostly helpful.
Okay, so what are some of the other projects you've worked on?
Well, Killing It Softly obviously was a big deal. I really enjoyed working on that. It was all reprints, so the editing was easier because a lot of these were not reprints or reprints that needed to be, you know, going over. They were a little bit rough. Um, but Killing It Softly, it was mostly just about what stories I was going to pick and what order I was going to put them in. And I think that's another thing I kind of have a knack for is um, putting the stories together, like knowing how the flow of the anthology should go. And so that was fun with Killing It Softly. Um, Before that, I did some anthologies with my son Bruce. We did Nightmare Stalkers and Dreamwalkers, which placed second in the Peony Readers poll. Both Killing It Softly's also came in second. We did an anthology called Fractured Realms to support autism because my daughter and my eldest son are both autistic. So that was important to us. And then I did A Scream in the Night. I had talked to Raina Young, and she needed a little bit of help with the editing, and so I jumped on board with that, and that was interesting. That was for Black Bed Sheets books, and I have to say I was very honored because Nick told me, who runs obviously Black Bed Sheets books. He told me I was the best editor, paid or unpaid, he's ever had. And that made me feel really good. Um, so those are some projects I've worked on. And I have numerous short stories out floating around. I just got one picked up by a charity anthology to support people that are trying to get clean, get off drugs. Um, and I have one story, The Dead Boy in the Lavender Suit. It was based on a story my mother told me, and it took place back when she was a child. She's gone now, but I wrote this story, and I placed in the top 10 in the Women on Writing competition one spring. So that made me feel really good. And I also got it picked up for SAT training, which was really cool. Yeah. So that was fun. Yeah, so I have a lot of short stories out there. I never thought I'd get to a point where I lost count, but I lost count.
Yeah, I know the feeling. So what's up next for you?
Oh, well, let me also say I'm also involved with the Women of Horror that Nina D'Arcangelo runs. I like to try to write a story a month if I can for her for and it's so funny because one of the authors in this anthology, Elaine Pasquelli, she actually reads a lot of the stories, and she does a great job. So I
Yes,
enjoy that. Yeah.
yes, she does. I also write for that monthly prompt too. So
Oh, cool. And I also have worked with Lindsay Goddard on or Goddard. I'm sorry. I thought for the longest time her name was pronounced Goodard, but it's pronounced Goddard. Um, she has a Weird Wide Web um, thing that she does, online, and I've joined her a couple of times for that. Um, and it's fun. She's really nice. I really enjoy working with her. Unfortunately, she had a really tragic death in the family when the call came up for Killing It Softly, and she wasn't able to get a story done for it. But she's been kicking lately. She's been getting a lot of stuff picked up, so I'm happy for her. Um, yeah, so those are other projects that I'm involved in. And you asked what's next for me. I've been trying to get a novel done for 10 years now, for a decade. Um, my son and I actually wrote an 85,000 word manuscript, a young adult. We sent out query letters. We had about 5 agents ask us for, the first 3 chapters or for the manuscript or whatnot. And we got as close as a junior agent wanted it, but the senior agent turned it down. So we started to rework it, and it's just become a monster. But I think we know where we're going with the monster now. So I'm hoping that we can kind of crank it out again. And I think this time I had I think we had like 2 or 3 stories published back then. And, now there's quite a wealth of things that I can list that we've both done when we send out query letters and, for the bios. Yeah, so that's what I'll be doing. And I always say after the end of an anthology, oh, I really think this is the last one I'm going to do. I always end up doing another one. So I'm not going to say it this time. We'll just have to see what happens.
Okay, and on that note, we will wrap the interview up, and I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I really appreciate you having me on. This was a really interesting experience and something else I can, put another notch on my belt. I was interviewed online.
Okay, and you can find the link to Dastardly Damsels down in the description. And that's it for this episode. So bye for now, everyone.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you.